Okay, now we're with Deniz Kurtoğlu Eken from Sabancı University to talk about her plenary about research as inspiration. Dear Deniz Hocam, thank you for accepting the interview.
You're most welcome.
And thank you for your inspirational talk as well.
Thank you so much, Vildan.
I think you really inspired people to perceive research from a different perspective throughout your plenary, because I believe when people think about the word research, they usually exaggerate its connotation, and thus they mostly avoid doing research. For example, they think that it's a long process, it needs a lot of data collection, they need to write a paper based on their research, and so on. Could you please share some of the highlights from your talk again, which may help our listeners perceive research as an inspiration rather than a boring and stressful process?
Okay, well, I think, Vildan, you've summarized it really well in terms of some of the key points I highlighted in my plenary. To me, the starting point is really the concept of exploration. Whenever I think of research, I think of an ocean, an endless ocean, an endless sea. I think of water, I think of no sort of borders, and hence the concept of exploration. So one of the things that will help us as teachers and as other professionals in whatever roles we have in our schools and institutions is actually to view research as an open exploration, whether it's through institutional research or classroom research, or more sort of individual, personal, professional development research. I think that really is the starting point, because it's also, I think I mentioned this in the plenary, Kirkare as a mindset.
Yeah.
It's a mindset. Research is a mindset. And when you see it as a mindset and exploration, I think then you also become patient with it. You don't start asking questions immediately. You ask questions, but you ask questions to explore, not to get answers immediately.
Yeah.
And I think that's maybe another important point that our teachers and whoever would like to engage in research more actively can keep in mind. When we start research, it would be much more fascinating and inspiring to start off without assumptions, to start off with that Kirkare mindset, again in Latin meaning research, and to keep an open mind, to let the data speak, to let your research speak, and then to sort of say, okay, this is interesting. This data seems to be suggesting X, Y, Z. So I think that's one of a few of the key aspects, that research, Kirkare, is a mindset, that it's very much to do with exploration and to do with being open and keeping an open mindset to all sorts of possibilities that can come up through the research.
That's right. I just want to clarify something. You said that we shouldn't start with some assumption. Does that mean that we shouldn't start with a question in mind?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because
I mean, people may misunderstand
Absolutely. Okay, no, thanks for asking that. Of course we're going to have a question, and that question will be our research question. I always use the metaphor of umbrella, or if you like, lighthouse. We will have one or two or maybe maximum 3 research questions that will guide us in our research. So, for example, I think I mentioned this on the 14th of May. We have a meeting to talk about teaching principles, to look at our research on teaching principles in the School of Languages. And we carried out a survey, so we're going to be collaboratively analyzing the results of that survey. We will start, of course, we can't do it in one day, with like 15, 16 colleagues who are interested in this. And our research question, our umbrella question, our lighthouse question is, what are SL instructors' perceptions of teaching principles in the SL. Or was it the other way around? But something along those lines. What are SL teaching principles? Yes, it's this one. What are SL meaning School of Languages, what are SL teaching principles as perceived by SL instructors? And that's a beautiful question. Notice that it's very open-ended. It doesn't have any assumptions in it. It is context specific, which I refer to in the plenary because it's SL. And it's meaning focused because there's the word perceptions in there. So we're trying to understand, people's beliefs based on their experiences of what these teaching principles are.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very helpful. And can you please tell us about one of your research that inspired you the most? I know you did a lot of research.
Yes.
But just to name and...
Okay, I'll mention the first one that comes to my mind because, as you know, I'm inspired by so many things. This, and I've talked about it in various different forums and conferences, but there might still be people out there who haven't heard about this. This was when I actually happened to come up with a different research tool based on a meeting that I had with a student. A couple of years ago, a student, and I was in my role as the SL director then, the director of the School of Languages. And this is important because this student, Erhan Fidan, he doesn't mind me mentioning his name. I've already got permission for life to refer to him by his name. He was having some issues with his teacher. And so I thought, and I was talking to the teacher, and I invited Erhan to my office one day for a meeting, for a chat. And I sort of worded it like that, bir konuşalım, let's have a chat. Konuşabilir miyiz? So he came to my office, he sat down, and the first thing he said to me, he asked me actually, was, Hocam, am I a problem student? And I said, this was happening in Turkish. I said, why do you ask me that, Erhan? And he said, well, you're the director of the school and you've invited me for a meeting. So, there's got to be some problem. And then we had a really nice conversation about, there's no problems, but sometimes expectations can not be the same, we need to share them, etc. And, I was so much affected by, somehow in that meeting, by what I thought was his approach and maturity. I mean, I just like his whole presence affected me. And the meeting went on for, 20-25 minutes. And I found myself at the end of that meeting saying to Erhan, would you like to interview me? And I don't know why I asked that, but I asked that. And he immediately answered, yes, I would very much like that. And he said, what would you like me to interview you about? I said, look, we've had a really nice conversation and I would like to have more of these conversations with you. I said, you choose, you decide what you'd like to ask me. And then I called this, so this was the sort of alternative research tool that, at the time I thought I could make use of. I called it role reversal in interviews. And, instead of you as a researcher interviewing somebody, getting somebody else to interview you, and then you as the researcher focusing on yourself and your answers and what's happened in that conversation. And he asked me if I'd want to see the questions beforehand. I said, absolutely no. I actually want this to be spontaneous. I want to explore with myself as well, Erhan. And he came, we had the interview. It was absolutely fascinating. One of the first questions he asked me was, Hocam, how many lives do you have? And because I hadn't seen the questions beforehand, I wasn't expecting a question like this at all. And, I thought, oh my God, what a question. And I hesitated. And when I hesitated, I answered later on, but I didn't answer immediately. And, he actually dived in there and he said, I could actually answer that question very easily, he said. He said, I have 2 lives. the real life I live within me and the one that I live in the outside world. And I thought, wow, So this inspired me a lot, and from then on I invited more students and also teachers to interview me. All of them were recorded with the permission of the interviewers, and I listened to my responses and the interviews later on the tapes to for my own personal professional development.
Excellent, thank you.
So that was a long answer, but I was very much inspired by this process.
Thank you very much for sharing this.
You're welcome.
With us. So I know you like this question a lot, as there is always a treasure hiding in the answer to this question. So I will ask you the same question that you ask in your plenary. If your inspirational pathway were a color, what color would it be and why?
This was one of the ones I was expecting. Yes, okay. It would definitely be blue. And the reason why it would be blue is because of the ocean metaphor. Whenever I think of personal and professional growth, to me it comes with reflection, but reflection not separated from research. I always like to find out about myself, about my expectations, about others, etc. So research, finding out, reflection are sort of embedded in my personal and professional development, and in that respect it is an endless and very large, vast, open-ended part of nature, and I think that's why it would be blue. The sky is also sort of blue in color, and it's similar. It's sort of endless, very open and wide.
Okay, thank you. And finally, what would be your top recommendations to aspiring teachers, especially about doing research?
Top recommendations, okay, about research. Well, I would suggest, they try and not concern themselves with, what will the outside world say? What will others think? Will this count as research? And to have the mindset of finding out. All classroom teachers are with their students every day, and there's so many things they can do, simple things like the ones I exemplified in the plenary they can do, but every now and again to sort of ask themselves the question, what can I find out from my learners today? What can I ask them about my teaching or about our lessons today? What can I ask them about maybe criteria that we can use as a class to see how things are going, but sort of believing in their learners, trusting in their learners and what their learners have to offer to them. Not looking for outside sources for research, but our very own in the classroom. That is the richest source of data, because our jobs as teaching professionals are all about teaching, and therefore all about the classroom and what happens in the classroom. So about research, I think that would be my main recommendation. And the more they do it, I feel the more they will feel inspired to try out different ideas, different research tools for their professional development.
Okay, thank you very much for this nice
You're welcome.
interview.
Thank you very much, Vildan Çal.